Alrighty, I have 7:03 on my computer, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in, get started here. Thank you all for attending this evening's Region Plans Community Forum on Comprehensive Zoning. This is specifically for Regions 5, 6, and 8. We have a few items of meeting etiquette to cover before we get into the programming. So, first and foremost, please be courteous. We do plan to share this information. We hope that it is helpful guidance to all attendees and then also all those who are catching on the replay. And so that's right, this is being recorded and we'll be posting the video online for future reference. Later in this meeting, we will have a question and answer session. We'll cover those questions that you submitted during the registration process. Thank you for those. And then we'll get to audience questions in the Q&A at the bottom or verbally with the raise hand function if we have time for that. As a reminder, we are here to talk about comprehensive zoning, again in regions 5, 6, and 8. So please hold any other questions on other topics, and we'll be sharing those individual region contact email addresses at the end of the presentation, and you're welcome to reach out to your region team in order to ask any particular, specific questions. Lastly, if you need any assistance during the meeting, go ahead and click on that chat button. That will get you in touch with staff who are on the call today. With that, I'll jump into the agenda and here it is. Yes, we will be covering the region plan, just give a little overview. We'll also talk about comprehensive zoning. What does that mean? What does it entail? We'll see a demonstration on how to submit an application for a change in zoning if you are the property owner or the owner's agent. And then we'll have that Q&A session that I mentioned a moment ago. And then finally, we will have next steps and opportunities for future involvement. Today with us on the webinar, we have Mike Stringer from Long Range Planning. I'm Christine Duval. I'm also from Long Range Planning. And we have Mark Burt, who is the Planning Administrator for Research and GIS. And just a reminder that the Office of Planning and Zoning, we're in charge of working on the plans for the physical growth and the development of the county. So we're responsible for updating those county general plans that you see and also administering the subdivision code and the zoning ordinance. This means that our staff also review applications for residential subdivisions and commercial and industrial developments, as well as zoning code enforcement. So we do a lot in OPZ. Again, specifically, we're here from Long Range Planning and Research in GIS today. And with that, I'm going to pass things over to Michael Stringer. He's going to provide the overview of the region plans and comprehensive zoning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Christine. And thank you all for attending tonight. We appreciate public engagement in this process. Really want to hear your input throughout this whole process. So as we talk about region plans, first we want to put them into the context of the General Development Plan, Plan 2040. Plan 2040 is the countywide policy document for land use. It looks out over the next 20 years. It includes a vision, goals, policies, and strategies for land use and land use related topics like water resources, open space conservation, transportation, housing, and economic development. The topics are organized in the plan in 4 chapters: the natural environment, the built environment, healthy communities, and healthy economy. We developed Plan 2040 through a community process that lasted about 4 years. There were multiple opportunities for community engagement, from in-person listening and visioning sessions to then transitioning to online engagement during the pandemic, and finally ending with public hearings at the Planning Advisory Board and the County Council. And through all those conversations with all those residents, 3 key themes emerged that really form the pillars of Plan 2040. And so that is that the people want to see the county in the future grow to be smarter, greener, and more equitable. And by that we mean that we grow smarter, that we're focusing development in areas with infrastructure close to jobs so that ideally people can live, work, go to school, and play in locations that are close to each other. So decreasing commutes and ideally be able to get to places without having to have a car to get there. that would grow greener. This county highly values its natural areas and its landscapes. The being on the shores of Chesapeake Bay is one of the prides of Anne Arundel County. And so we've reinforced in Plan 2040 our policies around conserving open space, conserving our most important and sensitive natural areas, increasing access to parks and green spaces across the county. And then the last bullet about being more equitable. It's been duly noted in reports like Poverty Amidst Plenty that while Anne Arundel County is an affluent county with a lot of job opportunities, we also harbor pockets of poverty. And those tend to have a very specific geography. There are communities like Brooklyn Park and in Severn and in Lothian, where we have communities that are struggling to get by, households that are very low income, and those tend to be communities of color as well. So there are equity concerns across the county, some of which have been that public policy has contributed to. Decisions in land use policy and zoning have concentrated poverty in certain parts of the county. So as we think about land use planning and how we plan for the future, we want to think about how we kind of try to undo those issues and elevate opportunity for everyone across whatever community they live in the county. Now, in Plan 2040, we were also directed to prepare 9 region plans. And those region plans are like smaller versions of the comprehensive plan. They address those breadth of issues from environmental to transportation to housing to the economy, but do it at a closer to the community scale. And you can see this map of the regions here. So this is a map of Anne Arundel County, and what's highlighted in the green and blue colors are regions 5, 6, and 8. So region 5 there includes Odenton, Gambrels, Woodwardville, Forks of the Patuxent, Two Rivers, and Crofton area communities. Region 6 is on the other side of Route 3, includes parts of Millersville and Crownsville. And then Region 8 is much of South County, so south of 450, all the way down to the county's southern boundary, and from the Patuxent River over to Muddy Creek and Route 2. Now, each of these region plans follow a similar process and similar content. They each begin with an evaluation of communities' assets and needs, and developing a shared vision for the future. Then we want to achieve that vision, we want to develop neighborhood-specific strategies. So while Plan 2040 may have recommendations around improving pedestrian and bike infrastructure, the region plan might identify specific location where sidewalks or bike lanes are needed to, say, connect a sidewalk to a neighborhood, a school to a neighborhood. Now, there was a schedule adopted in Plan 2040 for developing these region plans. We're initiating them 3 at a time. The first 3, kind of West County, Region 2, the Pasadena, Broad Neck areas, Region 4, and the Annapolis Neck area, Region 7, those have been completed and were adopted by County Council in the spring of this year. The northern part of the county in Regions 1 and 3, and the southeast part of the county in Region 9, those are currently in process. And those draft plans are currently in review by the Planning Advisory Board, which is a countywide board that reviews master plans before they go to the county council. And Regions 5, 6, and 8, we have just begun that process, are in the early phases of it. One key piece of each of these region plans is establishing a stakeholder advisory committee. These are committees of 15 people. They applied and were reviewed and then appointed by the county executive and confirmed by the county council to take on this role. And they represent a diverse cross-section of the regions, representing different geographic communities in the region, representing homeowner associations, local residents, local businesses. And we try to make sure that they represent the diversity of the socioeconomic demographics of the regions as well. And of course, in addition to helping develop the vision and strategies, these stakeholder advisory committees will also work with county staff to review and update the land use plan and the zoning maps. And we'll dive a lot more in depth about these zoning maps further in this presentation. But first, I want to touch upon public engagement, which is foundational to these plans. So next slide, please. Okay. So here's the planning process shown as a timeline. We began working on regions 5, 6, and 8 at the beginning of this year on this community assets and needs assessment. So in the office, we were gathering data like from the census, from economic analyses, looking at development trends, and engaging the community. So we've participated in a lot of in-person community events. Things like the spring fling at Tracy's Elementary, or going to Festival in the Green in Crofton, or Odenton Day. And informing the public about the planning process and listening to them about, what are the important things, the important concerns they have for their communities, what they love, what they want to see changed in the future. We also had online opportunities for engagement. We had brief questionnaires and a feedback map where you could actually get on the computer and put a dot on a map and indicate things like places that you love in your community, places that you want to see improved, dreams you have, aspirations for the future. We've actually compiled all that information into an initial summary, a summary of the initial public outreach, and that'll be available shortly on the websites that we'll show you later for each of the regions. An important part of that piece of this first phase of the planning too was that selection of the advisory committee. And those committees had their kickoff meeting last Saturday. So now that they've been seated, we're beginning the central plan development part of the process that will extend through next summer. And with that, we'll be developing a vision statement, strategies for each region to help achieve the vision, and reviewing and updating the land use plan and comprehensive zoning maps. And that comprehensive zoning review will include the opportunity for owners to submit applications for changes, and we'll talk more about that this evening. As we do this work, there'll be opportunities for public review, kind of all the pieces that we develop as parts of this plan. And we'll talk about that a little more in a moment. After the plan is drafted, we then go through this kind of formal review process by the Planning Advisory Board. Again, that's a county-wide appointed body. They make recommendations on master plans before they go to the county council. They will host public hearings and accept public testimony, so there's more opportunity to give input there. And then finally, the county council will receive the plans. That's likely to be in the beginning of 2026. And they also hold public hearings, will accept public testimony on the plans, and they have the ability to amend and then ultimately adopt the plans. The plans do not become effective until they're adopted by county council. So thinking about upcoming opportunities for public input. We currently have a questionnaire online about vision. So thinking about in 20 years, what would you like your community to look like? We've developed a set of about 15 statements based on feedback that we've heard from the community in previous community outreach activities to distill into like what those key priorities are that we're hearing from the public. And the questionnaire gives you the opportunity to rate the importance of those different statements. And we'll share that with the stakeholder advisory committee to help craft a vision statement that will go into the plan. As the stakeholder advisory committees meet over the next several months, they'll be focusing on different topics, like we've discussed for these plans, like the environment, housing, and transportation. And as they develop their recommendations, we'll put them out for public review online and have in-person events that you can attend. So we're trying to get as real-time of public feedback as we can into this process. So that way, as ideas are drafted and discussed, the public can review. And then when you see a full draft plan, you'll actually have reviewed all of the elements of it as it came together. So those opportunities to review the strategies will be staggered over the next several months into the spring of next year. Public will have the opportunity to review the zoning maps next summer, and then we go through that more formal review process of the Planning Advisory Board in the fall of 2025 and County Council review in the beginning of 2026. Okay, so now I'd like to dive in a little more deeply about comprehensive zoning. This is a key part of the region plan process, and comprehensive zoning is one of 4 procedures for amending the zoning map in the county code. So slide, please. First of all, I want to give an overview about what zoning is. So in terms of land use and planning, zoning is one of the fundamental tools that local governments have to regulate the development of land. The concept of zoning and zoning districts was born in the United States in the 1920s and was first adopted in Anne Arundel County in the 1950s. And zoning has 2 parts. There's the definition of these different zones in the county code. It's in Article 18 of the code. And it defines what types of uses can be allowed in the different zones and the scale of development that can be permitted. So that those zoning requirements cover things like the density, how many houses can be built per acre of land, things like the minimum lot size and setbacks, how far a building needs to be located from, say, a front or a side yard. Also, the parking requirements are in our zoning code. And this slide gives you kind of a visual set of icons, a menu of the different zones in the county. In the upper left are the R zones. And those have R and then either a letter or a number. So on the left is RA, that's our rural agricultural zone. And in that, as it states, it's primarily for agricultural uses. It allows houses at one house per 20 acres. So really keeps that rural landscape by having that low density. As you get over to the right there, there's R1, R2, R5, etc. And the number next to the R is generally the number of housing units allowed per acre. So R2 is generally 2 houses per acre. So that starts to define kind of the scale and density of a community. Beneath that, we have our commercial zones. Those are C1 through C4, C for commercial, and as that number increases, that generally allows for more intense, more large-scale commercial operations. There's also the SB zone, which is kind of a hybrid. It's small business that allows for commercial businesses, but kind of in the context of a neighborhood. So it might be an old house that now houses, say, a veterinarian's office. Beneath that, we have our W zones. Those are our industrial zones. Think warehouse. And again, the 1, 2, and 3 indicate higher, more intense uses. Beneath that, we have our M zones. Those are our maritime zones that go from MA1, that are like your little community marinas, up to MC, which are the large commercial boat yards. In the upper right there, we have in dark green the OS. That's our open space zone, and that's applied to parks and areas that are going to be in permanent conservation status. Beneath that, we have our MXD zones. That's for mixed uses. So these are zones that allow for a combination of residential, commercial, office, and other uses together. And beneath that, we have our special zones that are applied in town centers, TC for town center, and those OT zones are applied just in Odenton. There are 3 designated town centers in Anne Arundel County. There's Odenton, Parole, and Glen Burnie. It's important to note too, as we think about zoning, that while it sets these foundational ideas about what uses can happen on a property and their scale, there are other parts of the code, like the subdivision and development requirements in Article 17, that include additional controls, like our adequate public facilities requirements that require, tests for traffic, for water, and schools. That also, Article 17 also includes our forest conservation requirements and protections for natural features like streams, wetlands, and steep slopes. And those apply across zoning districts. So let's take a look at the map of this zoning map. So this, again, is Anne Arundel County, but we're kind of zoomed in towards the southern portion so we can see in more detail regions 5, 6, and 8. What really stands out here when you look at South County is all that light green, and that's the RA, Rural Agricultural Zone. About 90% of Region 8 is that RA zone. And that really sets one of those foundational policies and rules in the county that keeps South County rural. The yellow zones that you see, kind of yellow to tan, those are those residential zones. And about a third of the county is the R1, 2, or R5 zones. And those are our typical suburban neighborhoods, typically single-family houses, kind of development that we've seen since the 1960s in the county predominantly. When you see those areas of red, like there's a line going up kind of from Crofton up into Crownsville, that's Route 3, and those are our commercial zones. Less than 5% of the entire county has commercial zoning. It's really focused along those highway corridors and a couple other key areas. There's a big dark green in the upper left corner there. That's the Patuxent Research Refuge. So that's indicative of that OS zoning. And to the right of that, there's the little teacup as Route 32 goes around Odenton. You can see some diagonals through that, and that's those Odenton zones. So through this planning process, we will take a look at this map and review it and make recommendations for updates. It's important to note, again, going back to that distinction, that there's the code, the written text of the zone, and then there's the map. This planning process will just touch the map. We're not making any changes to the code. That's the purview of county council. But in these planning processes, we can take a look at recommendations for the map. But again, no changes become effective until they're adopted by the county council. And this review of the zoning map is something that's typical for counties across Maryland. Anne Arundel County doesn't have a strict schedule for it, but we do it generally about every 10 years, typically following the update and adoption of the general development plan. And we update it to account for changes that occur in how properties are used or changes that have occurred in the zoning code. So for example, those MXD mixed use zones were just recently introduced. So they were applied after the 2009 General Development Plan. Okay, slide please. So I mentioned there's multiple ways that the zoning map can be changed. Comprehensive zoning is the focus of this discussion and of what we'll be doing with within the region plans. And comprehensive is as it says, it takes a broad look at analyzing land use, development activity, and trends for, it could be the entire county, or in this case, looking at specific regions. And it's eventually reviewed and adopted by the county council. They're the final decision makers. We were very intentional in this round of comprehensive zoning to do it at the region level rather than countywide, because we knew we'd be going through and creating these smaller scale plans, engaging the community in more detail at the local level. And we thought that was the appropriate scale to have these zoning conversations. We want to make sure that as much we can hear from as much of the community, as many of the neighbors as we can, as we have these conversations about potential changes to the zoning map. There's another process called administrative rezoning, and that can happen at the request of a property owner for an individual property. But there's very strict requirements around that. It's kind of a quasi-judicial process, and case law has been established in Maryland that indicate that those administrative zones can really only be approved if there was a mistake in the zoning map, or that the applicant can demonstrate there's been such a change in the character of the neighborhood that a change in their zoning is merited. In that process, that's reviewed and decided upon by the administrative hearings officer. So that's an appointed official. There are public hearings and public testimony is accepted through that process, and it can be appealed to the courts. There's also a process for correcting just if there is kind of a simple map error, say just the zoning line and the parcel line deviate a little bit over time and need to be corrected. That's called a zoning district line correction. And if it meets the narrow criteria for that, that can actually be reviewed and approved administratively internally by the planning and zoning officer. So these different processes have different criteria and different decision makers. Okay, slide please. Okay. So now I want to transition and talk about so how we do actually apply for a change in this comprehensive zoning process. So next slide, please. So through this process, we've opened a window that'll be open until December 16th of this year, where people can apply if you are the owner or a representative of the owner. So maybe an owner is working with an attorney or an engineer on potential future development or use of their property. They can be able to apply for the change. And they can apply for either a single property, or if you own multiple contiguous parcels, you can apply for those in one application as well. And we've established a set of review criteria for each of the regions to help guide and inform our decisions. Now, not all requests are expected to meet the individual criteria, but let me talk through the list. That first, we want to look at consistency with Plan 2040, with that plan land use map and development policies that are established in Plan 2040. Then we want to think about the existing use. Sometimes the maps just need to be changed because they don't accurately reflect what an existing use of a property is. We also, of course, want to think about compatibility with the surrounding area. We want to try to minimize or avoid nuisance complaints and issues with the surrounding area. We're going to be very cognizant about the sewer service areas, especially in regions 5, 6, and 8. There are large areas that do not have public sewer that are on septic systems, and that's a real constraint on development. We want to keep those areas rural. And we want to, but at the same time, we also want to think about being supportive of a greater diversity of housing options, especially in areas that we refer to as communities of opportunity. And that phrase comes from an analysis done by the state, looking at areas where they have, sufficient infrastructure, access to transit, access to schools and jobs, to be able to put housing that's attainable for different income levels in areas where people have opportunities to have local employment and have access to quality schools. We also want to look at the history of properties and make sure that we're being consistent with prior land use and zoning decisions. We want to think about the public benefit that could be derived from potentially changing the zoning map, and think about whether it's supportive of strategies that will be developed through this region plan process. So, let's go back. There we go. Now I want to hand it over to Mark Burt to talk a little bit more and demonstrate how we actually use the tool for applying for a zoning change to this process.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to step out of the uh, Sorry there. I'm going to step out of the presentation and go to the Anne Arundel County website and show everyone how to find um, the information to apply for rezoning. So on our website, click on departments, and this will bring you to another page. It'll open up and show all our departments. Scroll down through, and you will find planning and zoning. On the main planning and zoning page, we usually have some information about recent events. You can see the for tonight's virtual forum. We'll click on community planning. Again, same kind of information. So we'll click on the Visit Region Plan Hub site. And when the Hub site opens up, it opens up to the main page for the Anne Arundel County Region Plans. Here you can find tabs for each one of the region plans. So we'll click on Region 5 here. You can also reach the region plans by clicking on or hovering over the regions and selecting a region from the dropdown. So when the Region 5 Planning Hub opens, you have some options at the top to explore the region, to stay involved, learn about any committees, learn about zoning, and visit the library of documents that have been published. The welcome at the top here allows you to sign up for any updates that would be put out about the region. In the yellow banner here is where we have the information on how to apply for a zoning change. You can see we have items linked here in blue. The first link is for the application, and the second link here were for these sessions. So we'll click on the blue applications link, and that will open up the regions 5, 6, and 8 apply for zoning change application, web application. You can see at the top here, there are 4 tabs, an introduction tab, the application, a reference map, and some next steps. So let's dive into the introduction page. There's a welcome here that provides some information on the web application here. If English is not your first language and need to translate the page, you can click on the translate button here and translate the page into your chosen language. Uh, Further down the page, it gets into what is in the application here. We talked about the formal application, the reference map. In the reference map, you can view zoning in Plan 2040 development policy areas, the plan land use map, sewer service areas, and communities of opportunity. We'll get into those here in a minute. And on the next steps page, we'll look at the timeline and what's to be expected. Again, the application period is from October 1st to December 16th, 2024. And further on down the page, we do have some resources here. We have a link out to a summary of Anne Arundel County zoning districts and a link to some frequently asked questions. Feel free to visit those. So if we click on the application page or the application tab, the application for zoning change opens up. At the top here, again, if you need to translate into your chosen language, you can click on this link. So again, the top of the application provides some information on rezoning, the timeline, and links to the hub sites. It does provide links to an FAQ page and the region plan websites if you need some more information on the planning process or any assistance. If you do need assistance with the application, you can call in to the long range planning office at 410-222-7432, or you can email long range planning at lrp-opz@aacounty.org. Now let's get into the application proper. So for this application, we're going to be selecting a site in Region 5. If you do not know what region your property is within, you can click the link to this map, and a map will appear, and you can search your property and find what region you're within. The second question is, will you be submitting for a single property or multiple properties? We'll select single property, and you can see a second question that opens. We're going to select our location. In the find an address or place bar, you can enter an address, and the address we're interested in is 2301 Davidsonville Road. And you can see that the search bar will provide suggestions for you and autocomplete your address. Once you select your address, the map will zoom to the address input. Now, you can zoom further into the map by using the plus button. You can zoom out using the minus. You can make the map go back to its default extent, the county view, by using the default map view. If you have location services enabled on your device, you can use the Find My Location button to locate yourself. Uh, the larger map button expands this smaller map into a page size map that you can view. And the map gallery allows you to select a different base map. I prefer the hybrid imagery. So once you have located your property and know which one it is, you can copy the address from up top here or re-input it into the property address bar. And again, it will autocomplete for you. Question 3 is, are you the owner or agent? If you are the property owner or agent, it's question 3A is going to be the same. What's the owner's name? What's the owner's email address or mailing address? And the owner's email address. And the last field to input for the owner information would be the owner's phone number. The fourth question is, what's the current use of the property? And for this exercise, we're going to say it's open land with no buildings. Question 5, have there been any unique planning and zoning issues? For example, a non-conforming use or any other previous pending legal issues? So there are none for this property. And what we would like to do with this property? We would like to build a new structure. Question 7 is where we select the zone that we would like to have the parcel changed to. If you do not know the zone that you would like to have the request made for, you can click on this blue guide link and a zoning guide will pop up for you. So we are going to select R1 as our residential zone. And why are we requesting this? We would like to build a home. Now, if you would have a site plan or a map to illustrate what you would like to do with your property or properties, it can be uploaded here by dragging the file or selecting the file from your computer. Note that the file size is only 10 megabytes, so please keep that in mind when uploading documents. The last box that we have here is a signature box. Just hold down and sign and click submit. Once the application is submitted, you'll see the thank you, your response was submitted successfully screen. And you will also receive an email from the system notifying you that your application has been accepted. Now, the reference map tab has all information regarding to our general plans in the county. Let's review the functionality of the map before getting into some of the layers. Again, you can use the home button to go back to the default map view, which is the current view you would see. If you would zoom into somewhere or accidentally move the map somewhere you don't want it to be, you can click the home button and it takes you back to that default view. You can use the plus button to zoom in, or if you have a mouse with a center roll button, you can use that to zoom in by rolling towards the screen or out to zoom out by rule. You can also use the zoom out button that looks like a minus. What's nice about this application is it does allow you to take screenshots. So if you would want to locate a property and you would want to take a screenshot of, say, the parcel, the current information with some parcel lines. Let's turn off these layers here. You would activate the parcels by clicking on the eye beside them. And say you wanted to look at the general development policy overlays. There are none in this area, so we'll go click turn on the plan land use. So you can see our site is selected by the circle there. So if we wanted to take a screenshot, we can include the legend and any pop-ups, and we can set the orientation of horizontal or vertical. We'll take a horizontal screenshot and we'll set the map area. You do that by clicking, holding, and dragging on the map. And then it allows a screenshot like you see on the screen here. You can enter a title for the image and download the image to your computer or chosen drive. Click the return the map button to return to the map and close the screenshot dialog box. If you would like to activate or turn on any other information in the map, you can click the eye that's beside them. So if we would want to see the adopted zoning, we can click on turn that on and see what that is currently. And if we wanted to see areas like priority funding areas, we can also turn theirs on. The legend button here, it looks like 3 lines with 3 dots beside them. Can be activated by clicking and will show all the active layers in the map. The little button that looks like 3 pieces of paper down here in the lower right is the open layer list, and that's where you can turn layers on and off by clicking the eyes. The Next Step tab provides you an opportunity to sign up for the mailing list for the specific region plan. It also provides next steps in the roadmap for the region plans. And that concludes the demo of the region plan, region 5, 6, and 8, apply for zoning change application. And now we'll go back to the presentation and hand it back to Christina and Michael.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was great. All right, so you covered something super important, and I might actually ask you to go back and cover it again because this is a really important thing that people need to know just to begin the process, which is
Mhm.
what is the zoning on my property? How do I find out the zoning on my property?
Yeah. Let me step back out of here. And to find the zoning on your property, you can turn the reference map on. Um, we'll close the legend there. We'll go into the layer list and we'll make sure that the region plans are active, the county boundary. We'll also turn on parcels, we'll turn off those priority funding areas, and we'll keep the adopted zoning active. So to find an address, you would go to the spyglass here, open search, and here you can enter an address. So we use the same one that we've been using here, the 2301 Davidson Road in Gambrels. So it gives us the result. We click on it and it zooms to the parcel. Now we can see that there are quite a few number of zoning districts in this area. So say we lived across the street in this neighborhood and we wanted to know what our current zoning was. You can click on the parcel also, close the search result. You can click on the parcel and a pop-up window will pop up. Since the parcel layer is on top of a lot of the other layers, that usually will be the first result. And you will see a one of however many layers are turned on in the map. So we have 2 layers turned on in the map. We'll go to that number 2. And you can see it provides us the zone R5 residential. And it's highlighted in blue on the map. So if we close that pop-up, the zoning color comes back.
Great. Thank you for that demo.
Mhm.
Really appreciate it. Okay, so I've found out what my zoning is, and I've looked at the resources that we shared here and seen that there are other zones that I could potentially change my property to be. But why? Why would a property owner want to apply for a zoning change? What kinds of things might they want to do? Give some examples, if you would, please.
Sure, I can respond to that. So, based on the previous regions, there are several types of zoning applications we typically get. Some applications may come from a small business that might be operating with what we call a non-conforming use. So this could be where a business has been in operation for a long time, maybe before 1950 when there was zoning. They had their business set up, and then the zoning was applied, and the business doesn't align with what's allowed in that zone. So they have the opportunity to go to the Office of Planning and Zoning and request a non-conforming use certificate. And if they met the criteria for that, they would then get this piece of paper that says you are allowed to have this operating use, even though it doesn't align with the zone. Now, there are many, especially local kind of family-owned businesses that operate that way, and they have been doing so for years, but they'll often express that there's a challenge with them getting financing. So if they want to try to get a bank loan to do some renovation of that building, they go to the bank and the bank says, wait, your use doesn't even align with that zone. That's a problem for us with your collateral for the loan. So there's a big opportunity through these comprehensive zoning processes to get the zone to align with the actual current uses. So oftentimes it is a small business coming in with a non-conforming use, trying to make that align with with the use that would allow it. Now, some applications may come from property owners who want to do something new or different with their property. So sometimes it's families who want to subdivide a property to create housing for children or grandchildren. And of course, some applications come from real estate developers who want to take a property and build a project to meet market demands.
All right. So lots of different reasons why you might want to change your zoning. But what if I have a property, I found my zoning, and I think my zoning works. It's good. I like where, what it is at this time. Do I need to do anything as part of this region planning process?
No, no. If you've reviewed it, say you've got your house and your zoning matches, and that's all fine, you don't need to do anything. We do encourage though folks to go to the websites and especially to sign up for that contact list so that you'll get regular updates through the process. So even though you may not want a zoning change, we do want you to know about, say, the strategies that are being recommended, and if there's any zoning changes in your neighborhood. By signing up to that contact list, you'll get regular updates when there's opportunities to review things that you can then take a look and provide comments and feedback. So even though there's nothing that you have to do, we strongly encourage folks to stay engaged in the process and to comment at all the opportunities that you've provided.
Great, thank you. And that reminds me, I'm going to send a chat to everyone just so you know if you are not already a part of our email list. That is the website you go to in order to sign up. And we have multiple different email lists. So if you have different interests and the things that we do here in planning and zoning, that's where you'd sign up. All right, so we have these zoning applications come in. The end date is December 16th when they all have to be in. What if I'm a member of the public and I want to see what people have submitted, perhaps around me? And, can I provide comment? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's central to the process. The way it'll work is that after these applications are submitted by December 16th, then the staff from Office of Planning and Zoning will analyze them. They'll make a preliminary recommendation that they'll share with the stakeholder advisory committees. They'll review them in the spring, April through May time period next year. And then after they review it, it'll come out for public review. So we want to have the staff be able to kind of verify what's been stated in the application, do some research to document the relevant facts on the property, then review it, let the stakeholder advisory committees give their opinions, and then we'll bring it out to the public to review in the summertime. And that'll be the first of three opportunities the public actually has to review these. So there'll be that opportunity next summer to review, Then when the Planning Advisory Board has their review, they will also accept public testimony, so you can give comments then. And finally, when it goes to County Council, you can certainly attend their meetings or write letters to your council members to express your opinions on these potential changes. And again, none of these changes become effective until they're adopted by the County Council. So the whole time frame, even though we're accepting applications now, no changes would actually be adopted till likely, into 2026, probably spring up to the summer of 2026.
And just to follow up on that, if you're changing your zoning, if someone changes their zoning around you, for example, does that mean an immediate change is going to happen, that a new development is going to come in?
Right. That's what we always hear that from the public, right? You think that if this decision happens, then, next week there's going to be something happening on the property. This is just the beginning of what's a very long development process. So getting the appropriate zoning would just be a first step for a new potential project to occur. Um, After, if the zoning was changed, they would then need to come in through the regular development review process. So that would include having to meet, as we mentioned before, those requirements for adequate public facilities testing, environmental review, having required public community meetings to then get those approvals for future development. Then after, say, a subdivision is approved, they would actually need to get a building permit and a grading permit. Each of those steps has requirements along the way.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, our final question that I have here is, uh, who are the SAC members? So if you, and again, we'll share this on the last slide, but if you go to your hub site, as Mark shared earlier in this demonstration, you can see the what was actually asked of and required from the applicants for the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and you can see who the selected members are. So these members were appointed, chosen by the county executive and appointed by the county council. And those names and their bios are again on the hub site for your region. So if you're curious to know who is on your region's SAC, then please, I urge you to go to that hub site and check that out. All right, that concludes our Q&A. I'm going to hop over to next steps and opportunities for involvement. As Mike said, the public involvement aspect of this is so incredibly important. And another urge for me, please, please, please stay involved and uh, you know, provide your feedback with any and all of these opportunities. So we have the review of, again, at the end of the application period ends December 16th. Planning and zoning staff will review those applications that came in and will then bring those to those stakeholder advisory committees, the SAC, where they will then review the applications. That is, as Mike mentioned, in that spring time frame of next year. Then we have the public review of the draft zoning maps. So you'll be able to, like the interactive map that you saw demonstrated earlier here, you'll have a very similar product that you can go find your address and see what changes are being asked around you and what those recommendations so far have been. And it goes to the Planning Advisory Board for review. That will also entail public hearings. You'll have an opportunity to do verbal or written testimony. That's in the fall. And then we have the County Council review and adoption. That happens in early 2026. And again, that will also include an opportunity for public review of the materials and also public comment. Then, of course, after the plans are adopted, we would then go into implementation. And we have our final slide here, as I was mentioning, the contact emails for your region teams and also the QR codes for your region's hub site. So if you're not already familiar with those, you can take a photo with your phone and it will port you right over to the hub site of your choice there, and the URLs, the the address that you put into your web browser are underneath of those. So it's simple, straightforward, aacounty.org/your region number. So we have lots of information that goes on those hub sites. So I will just, can't promote those enough. If you're wondering where we are in the process, absolutely go to the hub site. That is a great resource where we keep all of the current and past opportunities for engagement listed there. All right, and with that, that concludes our virtual forum. Thank you again for registering, attending, and providing all those questions ahead of time. We appreciate it, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening. Take care, everyone.